Aux mixers are highly effective for using the switcher in the presentation world, where all you really need to do is mix from one source to another or cut from one source to another. Large screen matrices can be switched with one button by recalling presets and storing the various previews. The biggest benefit to the Aux mixers is that they free up the traditional mixer effects buses in the switcher so that you can use those for your records or outputs that require more effects like picture-in-picture or advanced keying. Aux mixers can be found in the Aux Setup menu. You'll notice that we have a native Aux card installed in slot 13 and a universal Aux card installed in slot 12. The universal Aux card can be used as a mixer for both outputs, so output 1 and output 2. For the native Aux card, every pair of FSTI outputs, so 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, and 7 and 8, can be paired as mixers. 1, 3, 5, and 7 would then be your program outputs, with 2, 4, 6, and 8 being your preview outputs. You can also set up the mixer type so that 1 and 2 are both program outputs, with the preview output being available only in the multiviewer. To start with the setup, you select an aux. We're going to start with universal output 1 here. So it's in slot 12, output number 1, and currently he's mapped to number 2 on the aux panel. We're going to go ahead and unassign him and map him to a different location. Select map to aux panel and then simply select which aux we'd like him to be. We're going to make him number 4. We're going to do the same thing with our aux number 1 output. You'll notice in the multiviewer I have UIC1 and NAC1 on the bottom row. UIC1 corresponds to what we just mapped to panel button number 4, and NAC1 corresponds to the aux we're about to map. So we're going to go ahead and map this guy to the panel, and we're going to put him in number 6. So I now have 2 mappings. Next we're going to go and make them mixers. By selecting the aux, you can then change the type. Right now standard is the type, in other words it's cuts only. By selecting mixer, we now have a mixable aux. I can then assign the preview to the panel for control as well. The preview will only show up in the multiviewer. So let's start by mapping that to the panel, and we're going to go ahead and map that to 3. You may notice that 3 has now turned green, whereas 4 was amber. Next I'm going to map my native aux. First I need to turn it into a mixer. We have several different mixer types available for the aux. Mixer gives you a preview program, 1 being program and output 2 being preview. Mixer program gives program outputs on both outputs, and program preview we'll discuss later. We're going to make this a mixer. You'll notice now that number 2, output 2, has been set up as the preview in the preview field of our aux menu. I'm now going to map that to the panel. Now we left 5 open. I'm going to map 5 as my preview for the aux mixer. You'll notice I now have 2 green buttons. Those are my previews. And I have 2 amber buttons. Those are my programs. I can also name my previews. So we're going to go ahead and change the aux name to left preview. The next step is to configure our multiviewer for these new sources. Go into our multiviewer setup. I'm going to use window number 2 as my preview. So I'm going to assign source, left preview. We're going to assign that there, and there's a preview. Notice in the multiviewer that I have a preview now of the left window, and left is still assigned to left. Down here in Windows 6, I'm going to go ahead and assign Mix Preview to here. So there's Mix 1 Preview. And then we're going to leave Mix 1 alone. So if I select Mix 1 Preview, you'll notice that I'm switching sources. If I select left preview, you'll notice I'm selecting the sources for the left preview. We're going to go ahead and select our camera to both previews. Now with both of our previews selected on the panel, we can come into our Aux menu and then Transition. And you'll notice they dissolve from source to source. We can then select a different source to our preview, maybe the user interface, and dissolve to that. Now you'll notice in my multiviewer, left and mix 1 are cutting. Those are the actual multiviewer outputs. They're not the actual physical outputs. If you'll notice down below in UIC1 and NAC1, you do have a dissolve. That's because I've re-entered the actual outputs of the aux to the switcher so that you could see it in the multiviewer. Let's go back into Aux Setup and I will show you the last type of aux that we have, or the aux program preview. You'll notice here on my downstage monitor, aux number 4 on the ME card. Now auxes on the ME card are not able to be mixers, they are cuts only. But we can still set up a preview so they can be part of a salvo. So you'll notice it's mapped to menu button 19. I can come in and change the type of this aux to a program preview. You'll notice I picked up a preview over here. We can go ahead and map that. Let's map that to the panel. I'm going to go ahead and map that to panel button number 15. I can also map to our panel here, button number 16. Now I've got my program and preview mapped to my panel. You'll notice that I now have a purple and a green. Green being preview, purple being the program preview aux. Now what that means is it's going to be a cuts only aux, however we can set up a preview and see that in the multiviewer. To assign that, we'll go into our multiviewer setup. I'll go ahead and take this window here, assign the source of DSM preview. Now when I select a source for DSM preview, you'll notice it's changing. We'll deselect these others so we are only switching downstage monitor preview. So I can send the camera there or I can send the interface there. And then when we do our aux transition, it'll be a cut only for that transition.